Commander Ji-ho Kim pressed his face against the cold window of the monitoring station. His hands shook as he watched something impossible unfold before his eyes. Massive ships were appearing out of nowhere, like ghosts materializing from the darkness of space. These weren't just big ships. They were enormous, bigger than entire cities back on Earth. The alien vessels had a strange beauty to them. Their hulls looked like they were made of crystal or glass, catching and reflecting the distant light of stars. They moved with a grace that human ships could never match, gliding through space as if they owned it. Ji-ho had been stationed at this remote outpost for 3 years, and he had never seen anything like this. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," Lieutenant Mina Park called out from her station. Her voice was steady, but Ji-ho could hear the fear underneath. She was trying to be professional, but everyone in the room knew this was the moment that would change everything. On the alien flagship, Admiral Vorthak stood with his forearms crossed, studying the readings on his screen. He had conquered dozens of worlds, and this one looked just like all the others. The humans had some basic detection equipment scattered around their planet, but it was primitive stuff, like children playing with toys. "These creatures have early warning systems," his tactical officer reported, making a sound that might have been laughter. "But they're using electromagnetic pulses and radio waves. Very basic technology," Vorthak nodded. This would be easier than he thought. The Empire had protocols for dealing with young civilizations like this. Usually, they surrendered after the first show of force. Sometimes they tried to fight back with their crude weapons, but it never lasted long. Captain Yuna Lee sat in the Earth Defense Command Center, thousands of miles away from Ji-ho's monitoring station. She had been waiting for this moment her entire career, though she had hoped it would never come. Her fingers moved across the communication panel as she composed humanity's first message to another species. "Unknown vessels, this is Earth Defense. Command," she spoke into the microphone. "We welcome peaceful contact and request diplomatic dialogue. We mean no harm and hope we can establish friendly relations." The message traveled through space at the speed of light, carrying with it the hopes of 8 billion humans. It was a simple message, but it represented everything humanity stood for: their desire for peace, their curiosity about the universe, and their hope that they weren't alone. But space remained silent. No response came back. Admiral Vorthak had received the message, of course. His translation systems had decoded it instantly, but he didn't bother to reply. In his experience, talking to primitive species was a waste of time. They always said the same things. They wanted peace, they wanted to be friends, they promised they weren't a threat. It didn't matter. The Empire had expansion quotas to meet, and this solar system had valuable resources. The third planet had water, oxygen, and what looked like a decent population for slave labor. The decision had already been made back at Imperial headquarters. Vorthak gave the order his crew had been waiting for. "Begin standard invasion protocols. Deploy the advance. Scout ships. We'll have this world conquered by the end of the week." 3 long days crawled by with nothing but silence from the alien fleet. President Jun-ho Choi hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a time since the ships first appeared. Dark circles hung under his eyes as he sat in the emergency bunker deep beneath the capital. The room buzzed with nervous energy as military advisors and scientists rushed back and forth, their faces grim with worry. "Mr. President, we're getting reports from every monitoring station," General Kyung-Soo Park announced, his voice tight with stress. "More ships keep arriving. Our satellites count over 200 vessels now, and they're still coming," Jun-ho rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of 8 billion lives on his shoulders. He had been elected to lead during peacetime, to worry about economics and trade deals. No one had prepared him for this moment, the moment when humanity would either survive or perish. Every hour brought new alien ships dropping out of hyperspace. They arranged themselves in perfect formations around Earth, like a noose slowly tightening. The largest vessels positioned themselves directly above major cities: New York, London, Tokyo, Seoul. It was clear they weren't here for a friendly. Chat Director So-min Han stood at the Global Communications Center, her hands hovering over the control panel. She had been Earth's top diplomat for 15 years, skilled at finding peaceful solutions to the worst conflicts. But this was different. How do you negotiate with beings who won't even acknowledge your existence? "Ma'am, we've tried everything," her communications officer reported. "Diplomatic channels, mathematical sequences, even music. They're not responding to anything we send." Somin took a deep breath. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but humanity had run out of options. "Send the final message," she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. The message went out on every frequency humans could broadcast. Radio waves, microwave signals, laser communications, everything humanity had. The words were simple but carried the weight of an entire species. "This is your only warning. Leave our system now." As soon as the message was sent, sirens began wailing across the planet. The sound was unlike anything most people had ever heard, a deep, mournful cry that seemed to come from the earth itself. In New York, millions of people looked up at the sky one last time before heading underground. In London, families grabbed their emergency bags and ran toward the nearest shelter. In Tokyo, bullet trains raced toward evacuation centers outside the city. The highways became rivers of people fleeing the cities. Parents carried sleeping children. Elderly couples helped each other walk, and neighbors who had never spoken before worked together to survive. Despite the chaos, there was something beautiful about it, humanity coming together in its darkest hour. On the alien flagship, Admiral Vorthak listened to the human message and burst into laughter. The sound echoed through his command center, a harsh noise that made his crew uncomfortable. In all his years of conquest, he had never heard anything so amusing. "These primitives threaten us," he wheezed between laughs. "A species that can barely leave their own planet dares to give us orders." He wiped tears from his eyes and looked at his tactical officers. "Well, they've made their choice. Begin the assault." The Imperial scout ships swept across Earth's surface like hungry vultures, their sensors recording everything they could find. Admiral Vorthak waited impatiently on his flagship as the data streamed in. He had conquered 47 worlds in his career, and each one followed the same predictable pattern. First came the fear, then the desperate resistance, and finally the surrender. "Report," he commanded his intelligence officer. "Standard primitive arsenal, Admiral," the officer replied, scrolling through the scan results. "They have kinetic projectile. Weapons. Basically metal bullets fired by chemical explosions. Their rockets use crude chemical propulsion. We detected some electromagnetic pulse devices, but nothing that could penetrate our shields." Vorthak nodded with satisfaction. It was exactly what he expected from a Class 5 civilization. These humans were barely more advanced than the Stone Age species he had encountered on the Outer Rim worlds. Their weapons were the same basic technology that every young species developed, throwing rocks, just with more sophistication. Tactical advisor Gexmore studied the data with his 6 eyes, calculating attack patterns and defensive positions. His computer systems had analyzed thousands of similar invasions. The mathematics were simple and brutal. 72 hours for complete subjugation, he declared confidently. Standard protocol: orbital bombardment of military installations, followed by ground forces to secure major population centers. Resistance should collapse within the first day once they see the futility of fighting us. The Imperial fleet began moving into attack formation, their massive ships blotting out the sun as they positioned themselves above Earth's major cities. From space, the planet looked peaceful and defenseless, its blue oceans and white clouds hiding what the aliens believed to be a helpless population. But far below, in bunkers carved deep into mountains and hidden beneath ocean floors, a different story was unfolding. General Hyunwoo Shin stood in the primary command center, surrounded by screens showing military installations across the solar system. To outside observers, Earth appeared to have only basic defenses. That was exactly what Shin wanted them to think. "Status report on lunar installations," he ordered. "All moon bases operating at full power, sir," came the reply. "They still don't know we're here." For decades, humanity had been preparing for this moment. Not because they knew aliens would come, but because they knew that survival meant being ready for anything. While the world saw space programs focused on exploration and scientific research, military planners had been building something else entirely. Hidden facilities across the moon hummed with barely contained energy. Railgun batteries that could launch projectiles at incredible speeds sat camouflaged in lunar craters. Massive power generators disguised as mining equipment fed energy to weapons systems that no alien scout would recognize as dangerous. In the outer reaches of the solar system, beyond where any Imperial scout bothered to look, more installations waited in perfect silence. Automated platforms drifted among the asteroids, their weapons charged and ready. Communication relays, built to look like simple research satellites, connected every human installation across millions of miles of space. Colonel Yoonji Kim stood before her battalion in an underground hangar. These weren't regular soldiers. They were the best humanity had to offer, trained for a war that everyone hoped would never come. Each one had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might never see home again. "Listen carefully," she said, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's future. "The aliens up there think they know how we fight. They've studied our public military displays, our weapons demonstrations, our peacekeeping missions. They expect us to fight like every other species they've conquered, predictable, desperate, and ultimately defeated." She paused, looking each soldier in the eye. "They're about to learn what human warfare really means." The Imperial fleet moved into Earth's orbit like a pack of wolves circling their prey. Admiral Vorthak stood on his command deck, watching the blue planet slowly rotate beneath them. His tactical displays showed no significant resistance, just a few scattered military bases and some primitive satellites. This would be the easiest conquest of his career. "Begin the attack," he ordered lazily, already thinking about the promotion this victory would bring him. But something was wrong. His sensors weren't picking up any defensive fire from the surface. No desperate missile launches, no futile attempts to ram his ships with their crude spacecraft. Just silence. Then the moon exploded into action. Hidden launch bays that had been camouflaged for decades suddenly opened like the eyes of a sleeping giant. Massive railgun batteries built into the lunar landscape itself, powered up with a hum that could be felt rather than heard. These weren't the simple kinetic weapons the Imperial scouts had detected. These were monsters that could accelerate metal projectiles to unthinkable speeds. Lieutenant Commander Do-Hyun Park watched his targeting screen from deep inside Lunar base. He had been waiting for this moment for 10 years, ever since joining the secret lunar defense program. His fingers moved across the controls with practiced precision as he locked onto the largest Imperial ship. "Target acquired," he reported calmly, firing in 3, 2, 1. The railgun fired with a flash of electromagnetic energy that lit up the dark side of the moon. The projectile, a simple piece of tungsten no bigger than a baseball, shot across the space between the moon and Earth at 12% the speed of light. In less than a second, it covered the distance that would take a normal spacecraft hours to travel. Admiral Vorthak was still smiling when the projectile hit his flagship. The impact wasn't like the energy weapons his shields were designed to stop. This was pure kinetic force, unstoppable momentum that treated his advanced alien technology like paper. The projectile punched through his shields as if they weren't even there, then tore through the hull of his massive dreadnought, like a hot knife through butter. "What was that?" he shouted, but his crew was too busy trying to save their lives to answer. Before he could process what had happened, more projectiles began raining down from the moon. But these weren't the only surprises waiting for the Imperial fleet. Far out in the asteroid belt, objects that had been drifting silently for weeks suddenly came to life. These were relativistic kill vehicles, humanity's most terrifying secret weapon. They looked like simple space debris, but they had been accelerating constantly since the alien fleet first appeared, building up speed that would make them unstoppable. Now they began their final approach, moving so fast that they became invisible to most sensors. Vorthak watched in growing horror as his shields, the same energy barriers that had protected Imperial fleets for thousands of years, shattered like glass windows hit by rocks. 3 of his massive dreadnoughts simply vanished in brilliant flashes of light as the human projectiles struck them. Ships that had taken decades to build and carried crews of thousands were destroyed in seconds. "Impossible!" he roared, his voice cracking with disbelief. "Their technology readings showed primitive ballistics. How are they doing this?" His tactical officer was frantically checking and rechecking the sensor data. "Sir, these aren't energy weapons. They're using pure kinetic force. just metal moving really, really fast. Our shields weren't designed to stop physical objects at these speeds. Deep inside Lunar Base, Lieutenant Commander Do-Hyun Park allowed himself a small grim smile as he watched the alien ships burning in Earth's orbit. He opened a communication channel to every human military installation in the solar system. "All stations, this is Lunar Base," he announced. "The enemy has taken the bait. Commence Operation Thunderstrike. Show them what happens when you threaten humanity." The Imperial reinforcement fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a storm cloud, doubling the number of alien ships surrounding Earth. Admiral Vorthak had called for backup after losing half his original fleet in the first attack. He couldn't believe these primitive humans had caught him off guard, but it wouldn't happen again. "This time we crushed them completely," he growled to his remaining officers. "No more surprises." But as the new wave of Imperial ships moved into position, something strange was happening on the planet below. What Vorthak thought were simple civilian shelters were transforming before his eyes. Concrete walls slid away to reveal hidden weapon emplacements. Shopping malls opened their rooftops to deploy anti-aircraft batteries. Even schools and hospitals had been built with secret military purposes. In Seoul, factory worker Seung-hee Won received an urgent message on her phone. The government's emergency network was sending weapon blueprints directly to every manufacturing facility in the country. She looked at the specifications, designs for armor-piercing ammunition that could be made using the same machines that usually produced car parts. "Everyone stop the regular production line," she called to her co-workers. "We're switching to military manufacturing now." Within 2 hours, her factory was churning out bullets instead of brake pads. The same precision machinery that made civilian products was now creating weapons of war. Similar scenes played out across the globe as humanity's industrial capacity revealed its true potential. Thousands of miles away in Kansas, farmer Won-ho Lee was doing something that would have seemed impossible just days before. His corn harvesting equipment was being converted into mobile artillery platforms. The hydraulic systems designed to lift heavy farm machinery were perfect for aiming weapons. The GPS systems that helped him plant crops in perfect rows now guided targeting systems. "If they want a fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget," he muttered, welding armor plates onto his transformed tractor. This was happening everywhere. Delivery drones were being fitted with explosive charges. Construction cranes became missile launchers. Even civilian cars were being modified with armor and weapons by their owners. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were adapting everything. They had built for peace into tools of war. The most amazing part was how fast it all happened. Through Earth's global internet network, billions of people were coordinating instantly. A breakthrough in weapon design made in Tokyo was being implemented in factories in Detroit within minutes. Tactical discoveries made by soldiers in one battle were immediately shared with fighters on the other side of the planet. Admiral Vorthak had expected his 72-hour campaign to be over by now. Instead, he was entering the second week of fighting, and things were getting worse every day. His tactical displays showed something that should have been impossible. Human resistance wasn't weakening like it was supposed to. It was getting stronger. "Sir, this doesn't make sense," his intelligence officer reported, confusion clear in his alien voice. "Every other species we've conquered follows the same pattern. Initial resistance, gradual weakening, then surrender. But these humans, they're learning from every battle. They're getting better at fighting us." The truth was dawning on the Imperial command staff. They weren't fighting a primitive civilization that would crumble under pressure. They were fighting a species that treated war like a puzzle to be solved, where every defeat taught them how to win the next battle. Worse yet, the humans seemed to be enjoying the challenge. Their communications, intercepted by Imperial listening, posts were filled not with despair but with grim determination and even dark humor. They were treating this invasion like a game they intended to win. Dr. Jisoo Park hadn't slept in 3 days, but her eyes were bright with excitement as she stood over the wreckage of an Imperial fighter craft. The alien ship had crashed in the Nevada desert after being shot down by human forces, and within hours it was transported to the most secret research facility on Earth. "This is incredible," she whispered to her team, running her hands over the smooth alien metal. "Look at this energy conduit system. It's at least 50 years ahead of our technology, but The basic principles, I think we can understand this. Around her, dozens of the world's brightest scientists worked like their lives depended on it, because they did. Physicists from MIT worked alongside engineers from Tokyo University and computer programmers from Seoul National University. Language. Barriers disappeared as they communicated through equations and diagrams, united by their desperate need to unlock the aliens' secrets. The first breakthrough came when Dr. Park's team figured out how the Imperial shields worked. Instead of trying to stop incoming attacks with solid barriers, the alien technology used rotating energy fields that deflected most weapons. But the system had a weakness. It was designed only for energy-based attacks, not the kinetic weapons humans preferred. "Send this to every human military unit immediately," she ordered, uploading the shield frequency data to the global network. "If we can tune our weapons to these exact frequencies, we can punch right through their defenses." Meanwhile, on Admiral Vorthak's flagship, panic was spreading through the command crew. Imperial engineer Kexthor burst into the command center, his face pale with fear. "Sir, they're adapting our technology," he reported in a shaking voice. "The humans captured some of our fighter craft, and somehow they've figured out how our shields work. They're already modifying their weapons to exploit our weaknesses." Vorthak slammed his fist on the control panel. "That's impossible. It takes our own engineers years to fully understand Imperial technology. These primitives have had the wreckage for less than a week, but the evidence was right there on his tactical displays. Human weapons that had been barely scratching Imperial ships just days before were now cutting through them like hot knives. The humans weren't just copying alien technology, they were improving it. In a secret underground facility, engineer Tae-hyun Yu was putting the finishing touches on humanity's first hybrid warship. His team had taken the frame of a human destroyer and fitted it with captured Imperial energy weapons, but they didn't stop there. They powered the alien weapons with human fusion reactors, making them twice as powerful as the originals. "The alien sensors are amazing," reported his lead technician. "But when we connect them to our targeting computers, the accuracy is off the charts. We can hit targets the aliens couldn't even detect." The ship looked like a patchwork of human and alien technology, with sleek Imperial energy cannons mounted next to crude but effective human armor plating. It shouldn't have worked, but somehow the combination of human practicality and alien sophistication created something more powerful than either species had built alone. "Launch sequence initiated," Tae-hyun announced as the hybrid warship lifted off from its secret launch pad. "Let's see how the aliens like fighting against their own technology." The tide of the war was beginning to turn. What had started as a desperate defense was becoming something the Imperial forces had never encountered before, a species that could steal their technology and make it better. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Vorthak began to wonder if he might actually lose this war. Captain Haeun Kim floated in the command chair of her hybrid warship, watching the Imperial supply convoy through the viewscreen. Her vessel was a beautiful monster, part human engineering, part stolen alien technology, and completely deadly. The ship's hull was covered in patches of different metals, like a quilt made of war machines, but every piece worked together perfectly. "Target the lead transport," she ordered her crew. "Remember, we want those supply ships intact. We need their cargo more than they do." Her weapons officer, Lieutenant Chan-woo Nam, had trained for months on captured Imperial control systems. His fingers danced across alien interfaces that glowed with strange symbols, but he understood them as well as any Imperial pilot. "Weapons charged and ready, Captain. Should we announce our presence?" "No need," Haeun replied with a cold smile. "Let our actions speak for themselves." The attack was swift and brutal. The human ship moved like nothing the Imperial escorts had ever seen, combining the raw power of alien energy weapons with the unpredictable tactics of human warfare. Where Imperial ships moved in predictable formations, the humans darted and weaved like angry wasps. The first Imperial escort exploded, before its crew even knew they were under attack. The second tried to flee, but human-modified sensors tracked it through hyperspace and brought it down with a precision shot. Within minutes, the entire convoy was either destroyed or surrendering. "Boarding parties, secure those supply ships," Haeun commanded. I want every piece of technology, every weapon and every scrap of information they're carrying. Back on his flagship, Admiral Vorthak watched the disaster unfold through his long-range sensors. Another supply convoy lost, his forces running, low on ammunition and spare parts, and the humans growing stronger every day. His hands shook as he called for his science officer. "How are they adapting so quickly?" he demanded, his voice cracking with frustration. "We've conquered hundreds of worlds and no species has ever learned this fast. What makes these humans so different?" The science officer, a tall creature with multiple eyes, trembled as he approached his commander. Bringing bad news to Vorthak was always dangerous, but the truth was worse than any punishment. "Sir, we've been studying their communication networks," he began nervously. "Their entire species learns and shares information instantaneously. When one human discovers something new, every human on the planet knows about it within hours." Vorthak stared at him in disbelief. "That's impossible. No civilization can coordinate billions of individuals simultaneously." "But they do, sir. They call it the Internet. Every human breakthrough becomes available to all of them almost immediately. When our ships are destroyed, they study the wreckage and send the information to every human military unit in real time. They're not just fighting us, they're learning from every battle and becoming better warriors." The Admiral's face went pale as the implications sank in. Every species the Empire had conquered fought as individuals or small groups. They might have brave warriors and clever tactics, but they couldn't share their knowledge fast enough to matter. The humans were different. They fought as a single unified intelligence with 8 billion minds working together. "Sir," his tactical officer interrupted, "we're receiving reports from across the fleet. The humans are using our own technology against us, but they've modified it. Their weapons are more powerful than ours, their shields are stronger, and their ships are faster." Vorthak looked at his tactical displays showing the positions of his remaining forces. For the first time in his career, he saw something that terrified him. The humans weren't just defending anymore. They were hunting his ships, picking off isolated units and growing stronger with every victory. The Empire's tactical databases, built from thousands of years of conquest, contained no protocols for fighting an enemy that evolved during battle. They had no strategy for defeating a species that treated every defeat as a learning opportunity, and every victory as a stepping stone to something greater. The war was no longer about conquest. It had become about survival. The tables had completely turned. What started as humanity's desperate fight for survival had become something the Imperial forces never expected: a hunt. Commander Minho Song stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive vessel that was half-captured Imperial dreadnought and half-human innovation. His crew was a mix of Earth's finest officers operating alien technology that they understood better than its original creators. "Commander, we have the retreating Imperial fleet on long-range sensors," reported his tactical officer. "They're trying to reach the edge of the solar system, but they're moving slowly. Their ships are damaged and low on fuel." Minho studied the display showing the fleeing alien vessels. Just months ago, these same ships had seemed invincible as they approached Earth. Now they limped through space like wounded animals, desperately trying to escape the hunters that had once been their prey. "Signal the task force," he ordered. "We maintain pursuit speed. Don't let them reach hyperspace." His fleet was unlike anything that had ever existed in the galaxy. Human ships flew alongside captured Imperial vessels, all of them modified with hybrid technology that combined the best of both civilizations. But the real strength wasn't in the ships themselves. It was in the crews who operated them. Every human captain had access to the collective knowledge of their entire species. Battle tactics developed in one engagement were instantly shared across the fleet. When one ship discovered a weakness in Imperial armor, every human vessel could exploit it within minutes. They fought not as individual ships, but as a single coordinated organism with dozens of minds working together. The pursuit pushed beyond Mars, past the asteroid belt, and into the outer reaches of the solar system. Along the way, Commander Minho's forces established forward bases on captured Imperial vessels. Human engineers swarmed over alien technology, converting supply ships into mobile repair stations and turning Imperial communication arrays into human command centers. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the fleeing Imperial fleet," his communications officer announced. "It's on an open channel." Admiral Vorthak's voice crackled across the comm system, but it was no longer the confident tone of a conquering commander. It was the desperate scream of a broken leader warning his people of a threat beyond their understanding. "Mayday! All Imperial forces avoid Sol system." His transmission echoed through space. "Classification. Extinction level threat. The humans are not what we thought. They adapt, they learn, they hunt. Any ship entering this system will be destroyed or captured. This is Admiral Vorthak's final warning. Stay away from Earth." The message wasn't just being broadcast locally. Imperial communication networks carried it across the galaxy, reaching every corner of their vast empire. Military commanders on distant worlds listened in shock as one of their most experienced admirals begged them to flee from what he had once dismissed as primitive creatures. "Commander, should we stop the transmission?" asked his communications officer. "No," Minho replied with a satisfied smile. "Let them hear it. Let the entire galaxy know what happens when you threaten humanity." Across the galaxy, Imperial commanders received the same chilling warning. They gathered around their communication devices, listening to reports of ships that could adapt alien technology in days instead of years, of warriors who shared knowledge instantly across billions of minds, of a species that treated war like a problem to be solved rather than a battle to be endured. The reputation that had once made the Empire feared throughout the galaxy was crumbling. Stories spread of the Sol system, where an entire Imperial fleet had been destroyed or captured by creatures they had underestimated. Trade routes began avoiding that region of space entirely. Humanity was no longer prey hiding on a single world. They had become predators, expanding beyond their solar system with captured technology and an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same. The message was clear to every civilization within 1,000 light-years. Earth was no longer a target for conquest. It had become something far more dangerous, the home of humanity. 6 months had passed since the last Imperial ship fled Earth's solar system, and the galaxy had become a very different place. Trade routes that had operated for thousands of years now curved wide around human space, adding weeks to journeys that merchants had once completed in days. No captain wanted to risk getting too close to the system where an entire Imperial fleet had simply vanished. The Empire's military academies, once proud institutions that trained the galaxy's most feared warriors, had become places of study and worry. Instructors who had taught the same successful tactics for centuries now pored over battle reports from the Sol incident, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. "This is our greatest intelligence failure in recorded history," Admiral Klexavon announced to a room full of senior officers. "We classified them as Class 5 primitives. We thought they were barely capable of spaceflight. Instead, we found a species that could adapt our technology faster than we could deploy it." The room fell silent as the officers reviewed the data. Ships that should have been invincible had been destroyed by modified human weapons. Technology that had taken the Empire centuries to develop had been reverse-engineered by humans in a matter of days. Most disturbing of all, the humans had improved on Imperial designs, creating hybrid weapons that were more powerful than anything the Empire had ever built. Admiral Soyeon Jung stood on the observation deck of Earth's newest orbital platform, a massive structure that combined human engineering with captured alien technology. The platform served as both a space station and a fortress, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. But today, she wasn't watching for enemies. She was watching something that would have been unthinkable just months before. "Another delegation ship requesting permission to approach," her aide reported. "They're from the Zentari Collective. They want to discuss a trade agreement." Soyeon nodded, watching the sleek alien vessel approach slowly and cautiously. The ship's captain was following the new protocols that had spread throughout the galaxy. Approach human space slowly, broadcast peaceful intentions constantly, and never make any sudden movements that might be interpreted as aggressive. These weren't the same kind of visitors Earth had received before the war. These were representatives of civilizations that had once looked down on humanity. now coming with gifts and desperate requests for non-aggression pacts. They brought advanced technology, rare materials, and promises of friendship, anything, to ensure that humanity would never turn its attention toward their worlds. The transformation was remarkable. Ships that had once ignored human space now fled at the first sign of human vessels. Pirates who had operated freely in nearby systems suddenly found themselves facing hunters who could track them across light years and destroy them with weapons they didn't understand. Earth's final message had been broadcast across every known communication network in the galaxy. The words were simple, but their meaning was clear to every civilization that heard them. We gave you one warning. Next time there won't be one. The message wasn't a threat, it was a promise. Humanity had proven that they could take the Empire's best technology and make it better. They had shown that they could coordinate billions of minds to solve problems that had stumped other species for millennia. Most importantly, they had demonstrated that they were willing to hunt their enemies to the ends of the galaxy if necessary. In the Galactic database, humanity's classification had been quietly updated. The entry that had once read, Class 5 Primitive, Minimal Threat, now displayed a warning that sent chills through anyone who read it. Class X, Avoid at all costs, Extinction Level. Threat. The hunt had become the hunted, and the galaxy bowed to a new apex predator.